Now, technological sovereignty is the buzzword, right? We have Make in India is gone. It's owned in Bharat. We need to be a country of IP creation. What is the difference between space situational awareness and space domain awareness, and what's the thin line? So, do you really think, the space drone war convergence really needs to be taken up very seriously? Otherwise,
will of the nation also counts the means of the nation.
Absolutely.
And the resolve of the nation.
Right.
And you have the wills, means, and resolve, you will have the policy in place.
Right.
It means the space constellations at war, which actually means satellites being used for warfare, which means space warfare. The government of the day has to understand that these three things put together would give you the capability.
Space as a pivot to national security is launch on demand. Hello to all of you across all social media platforms. I'm your host, Colonel Manik Anandh. After the resounding success of our first podcast at Asymmetric DefTech regarding light tank Zorawar, I would like to thank all of you for your generous compliments, comments on YouTube, LinkedIn, and on my personal WhatsApp. From the light tank in the high mountains, we now go to space. In fact, there is a space startup in Hyderabad by the name of Take Me to Space. Space has always fascinated me as a young kid. I have grown up watching Star Trek, the Space Odyssey of Captain James T. Kirk and Dr. Spock with his overgrown years. It was also the time when Squadron Leader Rakesh Sharma went into space as Bharat's first cosmonaut or astronaut, as we may call it, depending on which side of the block you were at that point of time. And when the Honorable Prime Minister asked him, how does India look from space, he remarked, Sare Jahan se acha. These two events have had a profound effect on me throughout my military career as well. And 37 years down the line, after Squadron Leader Rakesh Sharma went up into space in 1984, I had the unique privilege of handling 25 defense space missions, which were released by the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi on October 22nd during the Def Expo 22 at Gandhinagar. So ladies and gentlemen and the Gen Z, we come to the second episode on Asymmetric DefTech podcast. And the topic today is space as a pivot to national security. And who better to talk on this subject is one of my mentors. Great pride, I welcome Lieutenant General PJS Pannu, Param Vishesh Seva Medal, Ati Vishesh Seva Medal, Vishesh Seva Medal, former Deputy Chief of Integrated Defense Staff Operations. Gen Pannu has had an illustrious career, right? And he is got large number of degrees. He is the Master of Science of Defense Strategic Studies from Defense Staff College, Wellington. He's got 2 MPhils from the Army War College, Mau, and the National Defense College, Delhi. He's commanding a division on the line of actual control opposite our northern adversary. And thereafter, he was also given the honoris commanding a corps opposite both our western and the northern adversary in the high altitude areas in the northern command. General Pannu, as the Deputy Chief of Integrated Staff Operations, was responsible for doctrine, training, and skill requirement issues of all the 3 forces. He was given the task of raising 3 major agencies: the Defense Space Agency, the Defense Cyber Agency, and the Armed Forces Special Operations Divisions. Under his leadership, 2 of the famous exercises regarding space and cyber X were conducted. He also saw the functioning of the various category establishments, the training establishments like the Defense Services Staff College and the School of Military Technology. He right now is a senior advisor at the SATCOM Industry Association. His trademark DefSat is a great event to watch, and I've been watching this event for the last 3 years, and it's been just a treat to see how he war games with the military and the space industry in closed setting. He is also the chairperson of the task force of FICCI regarding the modernization of information, communication, and technology. He's also on the advisory board of number of companies. So welcome to our podcast.
Thank you very much, Manik. I'm so happy to be here. And when you talk about DefTech, of course, it's become very vast, and that is how you have actually brought it up to the pivot to national security. So defense and national security sometimes used to be seen differently, but I think largely it is merging because of technology. So I'm very happy to talk about it.
Gen Pannu, you have done a doctorate, in business management, and your thesis was on indigenization of the defense industry. So I just want to know, what was your research proposal and what were your findings? I'm sure all the youngsters, the startup founders, and youth in this country would like to know as to where we are heading in this direction. Right now, technological sovereignty is the buzzword, right? We have Make in India is gone. It's owned in Bharat. We need to be a country of IP creation. So what were the salient highlights of your research, if you could let us know?
When I started the research, obviously started with an advantage of the knowledge and the network that I had within the services. And also the DRDO labs that I visited. I think I visited most of the labs. I may have just missed one or two maybe.
Right.
I also had the advantage of looking at how the ordnance factories are contributing to defense production and the PSUs and the DPSUs as we call it.
Right.
So for me, when you do a research, you need data, and therefore the size of the population which I had was not very large, but that was the total size that I could have actually gone in by. That is the total size that I could have actually gone to collect data.
Right.
So the sample size came down to give me some amount of indications as to how can we become indigenous, Atmanirbhar. First thing that dawns upon you is 100% indigenization is not possible anywhere in the world.
Absolutely, that's just not possible.
So if people think that indigenization would mean that everything is designed, developed, produced in India, well, desirable, but how is it possible is something that we will keep talking about it over a period of time. But it is the percentage, slowly, how you continue to keep replacing the foreign technology replaced by better Indian technology and not an inferior Indian technology.
Yeah.
So in my theses, there are 3 pointers which came out.
Right.
The first pointer was that the government must understand and must have a policy.
Do you think the policy is not there right now?
The government policy will certainly happen provided such kind of research elements are available to them. But over a period of time, from the British period, they had invested in defense technology, and we continue to look at that as the wholesome whole of everything, like the Ordnance Factory Board, the HAL or the DPSUs which were contributing was the only thing which was known to the government. And anything which was other than the DPSUs or the government-run organizations, according to how the British configured it, was not supposed to be given to anybody else, because the moment you start talking about privatization, it means the national secrets are out. It means how can a civilian contribute to war fighting?
How can somebody... I'll just like to touch on the subject. We have seen the DAP evolve over the last 6 years. I'm sure you've read DAP 2020. So I just want to know, based on your thesis, I'm sure there were some great outcomes would have come and which would have been taken care of at the national level. So how do you view DAP 2026 as a document? How do you feel right now?
DAP 2026, very large document. People need to actually sometimes look at professionals to interpret to them exactly what to read and how to interpret it.
Okay.
Second thing is, the simple part of that is, it gives you a roadmap and what are the processes in which the government can help you and you can help the government also. What is important to understand is, when you ask a civilian who's not served the military and is in the industry and wants to contribute towards a product that he has brought to the table, how can a person who's never fought a war, how can a person who has never been being made to sit in any closed or security related meeting, how can he produce a product and bring it to the table? It becomes very difficult. So therefore, unless, like for example in Israel, it is easy for them to bring product to the table because most of the people have served the Israeli Defense Forces. So that has been a challenge. So they have been taking help of some former military officers, some of them who've been in ISRO, some of them have been in DRDO, some of them have been in DPSUs. I think they have been trying to help it out. But 100% privatization, I think, has come in with fits and starts. And I think now more and more people are getting qualified because there were no institutions also teaching. So I think it is a work in progress to just read the DAP and bring product to the table is still, I think, not that matured. So therefore, reliance on the bell, reliance on HAL, reliance on ISRO.
AMCA, the Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, has not gone to HAL, right? And it has going to go to private consortium of the big boys in India, right? I think that's a change which is taking place. Now, coming to the subject proper, space as a pivot to national security. I would like to know from your, expertise. You've been operating at the highest levels in the Military Operations Directorate. How do you see the present aerospace security dimension, right? How do you see, do you think there are business rules, which have been framed? Whose responsibility is to actually develop these space capabilities? When we want Bharat to become a great spacefaring nation, we want us to become an aerospace power. How do you see this entire jigmarole? At some time back, the Indian Air Force wanted itself to project itself not as an air power, but as an aerospace power. So how do you see this entire milieu right now?
So Manik, I had got started with the indigenization as my research. So I had only mentioned about the first part, that is the government policy. I would like to complete that first.
Right.
Then the second part is the transfer of technology. That you have to look at how much was built on transfer of technology, and over a period of time, what were the advantages and how these the disadvantages start kicking in over long term, where either the spares are not coming or the designs have changed, and now you are actually stuck because you have a long contract, but the technology is old and you are continuing with the legacy system. So that is how the transfer of technology runs over time into a problem. The third thing is research and development. If you don't have research and development in India, then obviously you have to rely on transfer of technology, and you will never get the first-rate technology ever. Somebody who's actually throwing the technology out of the window is the one which will actually land up in your window. And that is how, over a period of time, you realize that unless you have your own research and development, which of course DRDO has done a great job, but DRDO, if you look at certain ways how it functions is, sometimes they're stuck on the material because we don't have the material. Sometimes we can't have enough power generation. Rare earth materials. So sometimes we can't have enough power because the batteries today,
lithium,
more so when you go into the digital world, everything is power.
Correct.
How much power, megawatts, are to be pumped into a battlefield, I think needs to be calculated in a TBA, how much megawatts is going to go in, because everything is digital, everything is electronic, everything is related to either direct power or through the batteries you have to power. And the third thing is electronics. What is your capability to design and to fabricate? For example, semiconductors. Electronics will take you to speed of processes and also miniaturization. Now, these are the two or three things. So power, materials, electronics are the three things. You look at somewhere or the other, we get stuck. We have the understanding, but we do not have the capability. Now, the difference between understanding and capability, I think, does most of the explaining of why we are stuck where we are stuck.
Correct.
Now you came down to asking me about the aerospace business. I think Air Force is the right forum where officers who have been trained on the aircraft would be able to tell you. But the moment you talk about aerospace, I think Air Force and the space business is not exactly the same. If you really look at the atmosphere is the one which helps an aircraft fly up to a point, but not beyond a point. The military aircrafts largely have been flying at the ceiling of about 15 kilometers, at best 18 kilometers. And even if you push it, something like MiG-31 and all, even can go to about 20 kilometers, not beyond that. So what happens beyond 20 kilometers is that you are getting into from troposphere to stratosphere to mesosphere to thermosphere. Now look at the rarity of the air, that there is no sufficient air. Then you're going from plus 20 to 30 degrees, you go to minus 40 degrees. From minus 40 degrees, you go to minus 100 degrees. And from there, you start going and start crossing plus 100 degrees. Now, any material which is to be made to cross over through the atmosphere and go to the space has to go through all these layers.
Right.
And in the absence of the sufficient air,
right,
there is no wing that can work. It is only the rocket which works.
Yeah.
So therefore, Air Force as a winged service can have and has had experience on up to 20 kilometers.
Yeah.
What happens between 20 kilometers in the space, which technically starts at 100 kilometers, but really you can't start doing any space business at 101 kilometers. It is above 160 kilometers. And of course, we're talking about VLEOs, very low Earth orbits, which people are looking at it. But any business that you want to do can only be looked at above 160 kilometers and beyond.
Correct.
So therefore, what is the air and what is the space? There is about 80 to 100 kilometers gap. And that is where now we are talking about the near space. The technology is different. The strategy is different. The manufacturing is different. The understanding is different. And also the rules, regulations of who owns it. Because you can only own what you can control. So how do you own if you don't control?
Any recommendation on that? Who should be the one?
See, there is a lot of law and a lot of regulation and understanding. If you say that my airspace is sovereign, it means nobody can enter it. But if somebody enters it above 20 kilometers, what do you do about it? Because you can't really defend it, like you from the air defense. And tell me, what do you do if something enters at 20 kilometers? How do you influence it? If you don't have any way to defend that space, which is above 20 kilometers. Actually, beyond 15 kilometers, it becomes very difficult to even, either your radars will not pick it up, even if they pick it up, how do you go there and what kind of aircraft do you have? And as I said, technically above 20 kilometers becomes really impossible for anything to happen. So if there is any element which is inserted, like, in America, you heard about the balloons that the Russians or Chinese sent, and then they were trying to, do whatever. How did they enter? Because there's no way to defend it. Right. So therefore, near space is the one that one has to look at. And of course, when you talk about the space as a business beyond command line, well, that is the whole new gambit altogether, where there is absence of atmosphere. It is absolutely black. There is no temperature regulation. If you are in the sun, you're burnt. If you're in the shade, you freeze. There is no oxygen. There is no gravity. Technically no gravity, but there is always some gravity. Otherwise, there would be no orbit. Right. So this is the difference between the air and the space. But loosely, you can continue to call it aerospace, but the businesses are very, very different.
So, Gen Pannu, we are talking about space, as a pivot to national security. Right now, you have got high-resolution satellites, which can detect the troop movements, the infrastructure in the line of actual control, along the line of control, and the Indian Ocean region. There are a lot of use cases of space, right? You have got early warning, you have got communication, you have got missile guidance, you have got maritime domain awareness. And I want to talk of, has space really got integrated into the higher national defense policy and planning, And if I could just reiterate my previous question also, like, are you really okay with how the things are going on right now in Bharat? Who's actually, when I got commissioned 93, we were talked of the principles of which says unity of command and control. They have to have somebody to get this capability going right now in this country. You have got stakeholders. So generally, the militaries have been leading the space capability. But in our case, ISRO has been the one which was into the scientific and technological domain, and now with in-space coming up. And so I just want to know, space, when you say a pivot to national security, so if you could just comment on how the military is getting integrated into the higher national defense planning, and what are your views on this, Miliu?
As far as space, which is in an expression, the pivotal place it has in the national security is extremely important. And the direction that India is headed is also, the direction is right, but the speed may have to be a little more rapid.
Right.
I mean, you can have a good direction, but at the end of it, the contest is all about who does better in a time frame.
Right.
You may be okay today, but you may not be okay tomorrow. And if you're just about okay, it may not be sufficient for your national security.
Correct.
What important part that I want to talk about here is that when, in fact, you had spoken about some of the use cases. Your first use case was early warning, detection of troops and movements. It is important to understand that you need to build a capability of persistent surveillance.
Yep.
And persistent surveillance is around the clock, all weather. It should not happen that on a given day, you want information and somebody tells you, but my satellite is not over it yet. And you say, when is it going to be over? You say, maybe day after tomorrow or maybe next week. And then you say, okay, I have to tilt the sensors, or my swath is not big enough, or I have to maneuver. Earlier, the satellites were not maneuverable. Fortunately, now some amount of
experience.
So some of the maneuvering element has now been put into the capability of satellites. If the satellite is passing over the place and it says, no, it was all cloudy, so again now you wait for another 1 week, 10 days. It depends on when this your low Earth orbit, the polar orbits move very fast.
Absolutely.
And if that time nothing is happening, it means somebody will tell you nothing is happening.
Right.
But you have to actually make sure that it is not only that you have the ability to see around the clock in all weather conditions, but also the ability to track it. The ability to track also comes from giving the exact location of it, unless you have your own PNT, position, navigation and time.
Right.
How would you know where it is? Everything looks the same. Which mountain top has given you some information that there is a movement and all that. A lot of mountain tops look the same, but where exactly, which mountain top are we talking about? If you have that, then you must have a GIS application. And your maps, which have to be digital, which are GIS based, all this information should automatically come onto that. Then is that if you don't have enough spectrum, and you don't have seamless communication, uninterrupted communication without latency, then you will have that either your sensors have picked up your PNT from wherever you get it, whether it is yours or somewhere else, but if it is pixelated because the bandwidth was not enough, or there is huge amount of latency, or the communication has been broken for some reason, then what do? The satellite has picked up, but it has not been able to transfer the data onto you.
Correct.
So the speech, when you talk about communication, the data transmission, your throughputs, your speed of communication, your bandwidth, all that works. So therefore, newer and newer technologies are coming in. And then should you have a satellite where the power is weak on a given day, what do you do with that? The sensors will not work to the full efficiency. You can't maneuver it. And if you are made to maneuver a satellite too much, it'll run out of fuel. Yeah. So therefore, in the space warfare, somebody might do something to tease you to a point that you continue to maneuver and run out of your fuel. So, these are the complexities. So unless we take care of all these things, you have to have the ability of decision superiority. One, you need to have a space deterrence capability. Two, so that nobody can run and make your satellites run around and get wasted out. And you must have enough competence for persistence in all the attributes that I'm talking about. That is what will defend a nation, because what you do on ground will impact on how you're being served by the space. So really speaking, the ground troops now are a client to the space.
Right.
The naval troops or navies of the world are also client to the space. Right. And the space must serve the multi-domain operations, whether it is the naval forces, or the ground forces, or the special forces, or the air forces, all put together. And the rocketeering, the missile warfare, the drone warfare, all getting autonomous. They must get the right precision, information, and guidance. Otherwise, you will not be able to fight a battle. So therefore, even for your internal security, your disaster management, and your future warning of all the hazards, I think space becomes the key. And therefore, it becomes pivotal to the national security.
Yeah, very rightly said. In fact, Gen Pannu, we are having this podcast at a very great time. You had the Vikram 1, the rocket launch by Skyroot. You had an attempted launch of the first Opta satellite by GalaxyEye, which actually ran into some rough weather, but I'm sure those guys will bounce back. But you see, China and the United States of America, the kind of satellite launches they're doing, the speed at which they're going, I think it's really, all the orbital slots are getting occupied. I think we really need to catch up as a space-faring nation if we want to be there somewhere there, right? And we had the ASAT test in 2019, the Shakti, So my next question is, what I can guess from our conversation is that space is becoming central, What would be a military war, without space? And if one country is empowered and the other is not. So I think space is really becoming, as part of the central nervous system, the future war?
Absolutely. Today, when you talk about technology, you would have realized that earlier we were talking about terrestrial networks. From terrestrial networks, the internet came in and it became cyber networks. And cyber networks had run out of steam when we realized that these machines can be attacked. So it means the terrestrial networks had become vulnerable. A lot of work then was done to make sure that we have the underground cables running from one place to another. Now look at the cost and the infrastructure and the time it takes to build that kind of a thing. Either you're building towers or you're laying cables. And even if you're building towers, they can also be interfered. Or if you're building cables, your data centers can also be attacked through the cyber penetration, because far too many cyber warriors are, and it is very easy for somebody to become a cyber warrior, because you find youngsters are born with a cell phone in the hand. You don't have to teach them much. They actually have innovated from the cell phone itself how they can do business faster and better. Now, these are natural geek resources available. So the moment you give them a computer, you give them a better machine, correct, they become cyber warriors. They can also configure things which are there to protect, give you firewalls and all that. But we don't own internet. Our internet is all open. So cyber is a global common. Now, on top of it, it is the space. Now, space is a legacy. Really speaking, if you really look at space as the fourth frontier and cyber as the fifth frontier.
Right.
Because the space started in the 50s. After Second World War, the space warfare started. I know V2 missiles are the ones which actually motivated initially the Russians, the Soviets, and then followed by the Americans to have the space race, the ability to get into space. So because of that legacy, systems of a rocket throwing a satellite into the space and satellites moving around and giving you the radio frequency communication, or it was just pure simple transponders, giving you communication. But now what has happened is, as the systems have become smarter, the cyber world has come in, which is a fifth domain. Yeah. This fifth frontier is literally taking over even the fourth frontier. Absolutely. So unless the fourth and fifth come together, we are going to have a lot of vulnerabilities. And if we can get our act right in space and protect our space assets, have huge amount of investments in safe, efficient space infrastructure, you might find over a period of time that your terrestrial infrastructure would become less affordable, less efficient, and your space infrastructure, if it is safe, smarter, faster, will ultimately be the mainstay for a nation. So ultimately, that is how it becomes the pivot, not only of national security, right, but also national growth, national development, and national economy.
Gen Pannu, absolutely very well brought out, regarding the cyber thing, the fifth domain you're talking about. I remember asking you the question at the India Space Congress, Now, we had that unfortunate launch of the PSLV at Sriharikota, and large number of satellites went down. And I clearly asked you, I remember that time, that could it be a cyber threat? And you said it may be, and I'm sure the agencies must be working on it. So yes, actually, cyber is one domain without fighting anything. You don't have to get kinetic. It's in the non-kinetic domain, and without and I know our adversaries, the capability is that, and since we are really into digital India and UP, and also cyber is actually a great thing, a very pertinent point brought out, and we need to be very careful. Otherwise, what happened with PSLV, if it was a cyber attack, you never know, and we have to be very careful on that. So coming back to, space has seen, how the Ukraine conflict, in Central and East Europe, how space has made, and I think even space played a major part in the collusion of our two adversaries in Operation Sindoor, right? And I, as a military professional, as I see from outside, this collusion is really increasing, and we really need to pull up our socks, to match this collusion which is happening on our western and the northern front. So how do you think we should prepare, right now as we talk in the July of 2026 for a space war? Are we really ready? What do you think we need to do in terms of developing the capability? We talked of the aerospace security dimension, but do you really think, is the military really getting involved in ready for a space war? And because see, for capability development, you need to have a procedure in place. You talked of the DAP, right? And a connected question with that, which I would like your views, is we have to develop capability. How do we do that? Is the military involved? And do you think to develop an adequate space capability, we know these space missions which were launched 4 years back, they are going very slow, the progress is not that great. So do you think even as a military professional that to develop this capability, you should have a separate chapter maybe of a defense acquisition procedure for space as adjunct. So your views on this entire milieu?
When you were initially asking a question on DAP, of course, our focus became on indigenization.
Yeah.
But probably when you start discussing whether space should be part of DAP 2026 or not, well, the explanation becomes a little different and more interesting. The legacy defense acquisition and space development are not exactly the same thing. You don't have a capability which you want to indigenize. Actually, you want to build a capability. And when you build a capability, there is no acquisition to it. There is no L1, which has been the bane of our defense acquisition for so far procurement is concerned, because it's budget related. You want to build a capability.
Right.
And I think space capability development has to be a separate chapter altogether, or it has to be a separate program delinked from 2026. Some of the elements of 26 can go into it, but it cannot be adjunct or a subset of DAP. It has to be a separate document as a policy document, and some elements of the DAP can be part of it. So the other way around.
Right.
Second thing is that you said, what should military do? Good thing is that last year, military came out with a space doctrine.
Yeah, correct.
Now, it is not in the open domain, but the indications of what it actually points to is that India is also looking at space as a domain for warfighting. I think that is a big change.
Right.
While the Space Policy 2023 did not mention anything about defense, it did not even mention the word security. It only mentioned safety. And safety and security are two different things.
Right.
Safety can be safety against debris. Safety against anything which is unintended. But security is safety and defense against intended harm that can be brought to your space infrastructure.
Right.
Whether it is for military use or otherwise, your capability can be degraded.
Right.
And if there is an intentional attempt to either disrupt, degrade, destroy, all these elements that are thrown in, you need to heavily invest in the concept of space security. And therefore, from the SSA, look at whatever is coming to us. We need to look at the space domain awareness. And space domain awareness squarely sits into the military domain. This is how you build deterrence. Now, deterrence is not about attacking. Deterrence is also about hardening. Deterrence is also about making sure that you are aware of something happening and you are taking a preemptive action to prevent that damage. So capability to maneuver, capability to have your hardened systems. If your data is in the space, then that data needs to be protected. That data needs to be brought to the Earth station as it is meant to be rather than in a disrupted fashion. So all that goes into the military way of looking how we look at the space domain. So I think a lot more needs to go into it. We have just started. However,
General Pannu, I wanted to see there are a lot of young viewers here. They may not be knowing the intricacies. I want you to explain to our young audience what is the difference between a space situational awareness and space domain awareness, and what's the thin line? There's the difference. Yeah.
Space situational awareness is that anything which is in the space, whether it is a debris or any other, either it is a rocket which is moving around, or there's another satellite which is moving around. So you don't have a collision. So if you collide, then obviously you were not aware and you could not maneuver. You need to have sensors to make sure that the unintended damage does not come to you. Say, for example, if you're going on a road and if you're going and hitting some other car, which is also going on the road.
Correct.
So it means either you were not aware of it or you were not good enough to avoid that kind of an accident. That is what space situational awareness is all about.
Yeah.
But space domain awareness is now is the battlefield. That if you're going to be hit by somebody, you need to make sure that A, you're aware that somebody is going to hit you. What weapon systems are going to be used? Where those military or other elements have come in which are going to disrupt, even it can be a attack which you don't see, it can be a cyber attack, but you should be able to sense it. It can be a directed energy weapon. You should.
So to say that SSA is a subset of SDA?
It is not, but it is on the similar plane of thought.
Are they interlinked?
They are interlinked only up to a point, but I think there is some amount of differences. So I would say what SSA is to civil is SDA to the military.
Oh, that's great. Right. Now, let's talk of the space and the drone warfare convergence. This is a subject very close to your and my heart. You've seen how these MQ-9s have got shot down in the Gulf War. The MQ-9s, and we're also provoking 31 of them, the Sky Guardian, and they are operating. So do you really think, the space drone war convergence really needs to be taken up very seriously? Otherwise, you'll have, the space detects and the drones take action locally and the kinetic action is taken. So what are your views? How do you see, if you do crystal ball gazing, we have got some time to go into this. So how do you see this Spain drone warfare convergence, especially in view of the large number of MQ-9s getting shot down in the war with Iran in the Gulf? And so how do you see that going forward?
As we initially spoke about multi-domain operations, the drone operations are really speaking part of the multi-domain operations. It can be an aircraft where there is a pilot, and there's an aircraft where there's no pilot. So if there's an aircraft which has communication to the base station on ground, or the aircraft can have a communication to the space, through space, it can be to a Earth station on ground.
Right.
The advantage or disadvantage are very clear. That if there is any disruption which is to happen between the Earth and the aircraft, which is either autonomous, that is the UAV or drone or whatever you call it, and manned aircraft, the damage is the same. Because A, you can be picked up, you can be disrupted, and you can be shot down.
Right.
Either it is a soft kill or a hard kill. It is immaterial. The fact is that you have lost an asset.
Right.
But drones are much cheaper. Drones are becoming more and more smarter. Drones are actually the real example of autonomous warfare. A person who's actually controlling the drone, nobody really needs to understand or can find out where it is. At least in the Air Force, there is an Air Force base because the infrastructure is so big.
Correct.
If the drone takes off from anywhere, nobody knows where the controller is sitting. And if the controller is sitting in the space, to mention not that a person is sitting in the space, but controlled from the space, it's very difficult to find out who's controlling the drone.
Right.
So therefore, any connection of communication, the PNT, which is the navigation, can be done much better through the space, more efficiently, because there's no obstruction, there's no curvature. You don't have any interference of terrain.
Right.
There is no curvature of the earth and there is no, even if the drone is flying very, very low,
right,
it can still be controlled from the space.
Right.
If it is flying very high, it can still be controlled from the space.
Right.
Second thing is persistent surveillance. You may not have very good sensors to look at the terrain or to look at the troop movement or movement which is very, very difficult to detect from the space.
Right.
The combination of the ISR satellite and the ISR drone can be so beautifully curated on a GIS map that what a space asset cannot see very clearly, the drone can be a companion and flown in tandem in the same area. And you can have a grid system where number of drones are connected with the ISR configuration. And this synergy between the drone surveillance and satellite surveillance, right, brought down to the GIS can give you a very, very clear real-time information to which the drone can become a weapon of choice.
Right.
It can first be used for surveillance and it can be a loitering ammunition and go and destroy the same thing, provided somebody is giving the right command. And if the command is also autonomous, and then you start feeding what is something that you don't need to refer back, I think then it goes to autonomous warfare. The speed at which the operations and the economy at which the operations will be conducted will decide the winner or a loser very quickly.
Right. So, Gen Pannu, let's go back in time. You were responsible and you got the Defense Space Agency formed. We're talking of space as a national security. It's been 7 years since the time DSA has come up under the core ideas. So I was talking of getting the military more into the national defense planning into the space. So when you visualize the forming of the DSA, right, 7 years back and when it was formed, So, in your mind, did you ever think of that Bharat will have a space command? You know, we're talking of the a lot of theatrized commands coming up. You know, we're talking of a mosaic picture. You know, with this thing with integration of all the services. There is some time where the theatrized commands will come, but now since space as a pivot to national security is a theme, you know, space has got economic security implications. In fact, space affects the common man on a daily basis. So, do you really think we really need to go and talk and get this space command in place?
Colonel Manik, there has always been a thought that we will build a space command and a cyber command. That is the beginning of the thought. And then over a period of time, whoever and however the deliberation was done, it came down to, okay, let's build an agency who will have a 2-star as a head of it. Earlier, the space command or cyber command would have had a 3-star, which is a CNC equivalent. So really speaking, we brought it down to a couple of notches. Smaller you build, smaller you can think, smaller you will be budgeted for, and smaller are the levels of authority that you would have. So therefore, if from Defense Space Agency you want to jump into the warfighting domain, you know how many levels we have to cross together.
So do you agree that space command is required?
100%. Yes.
It should be an urgent requirement, actually?
It is an urgent requirement, but you can't just build structures. You need to make sure that they are empowered. For example, the allocation of business rules.
Yeah,
I mean, you can build any infrastructure, but if you don't give the powers,
absolutely,
you don't have allocation of business rules attributed to it, they can't be budgeted.
Right.
They won't have the authority of the government to say this is what we want.
Right.
So ultimately, if the allocation of business rules and the levels are what they are,
right,
the absence of allocation of business rules, the point is that somebody has to do it and nobody has any idea who to do because they're not empowered. They don't have that kind of infrastructure. They don't have the structure in place.
So it will require some legislation, I guess, in the parliament?
Think yes. See, that is why I think we started our conversation with policies.
Correct.
The nations need to understand that when you have will of the nation also counts with the means of the nation.
Absolutely.
And the resolve of the nation.
Right.
And you have the wills, means, and resolve, you will have the policy in place.
Right.
So the government of the day has to understand that these 3 things put together would give you the capability. And the moment you have the right policy, nobody stops you. After all, you want to say we have less brains in India? We don't.
Absolutely not. Absolutely. Gen Pannu, absolutely. Thank you for, reiterating this thing. And I think the powers to be and whoever the Indian government should take note of. Actually, when you talk of the theatrized commands, I think first thing is what we would recommend is a formation of a space command. Right. Now, we know our adversary's capability, we talk of space situational awareness, space domain awareness. I went to a startup called Digantra in Bengaluru, and they showed me a beautiful software in their operational room where they showed how the satellites are moving and how the adversarial satellites could even hit our satellites in real time. And so we are being monitored, We don't have those satellites in space. We just got out 54 or something. Our adversaries have got thousands and thousands. The way they're launching about hundreds of satellites in a year, we're getting monitored, So all our launch sites, are mapped. So the next question is now, space as a pivot to national security is launch on demand. So what are your views, as to have a triad of launch on demand? It could be the air launch, it could be the ground launch, it could be the maritime version. So are we really factoring it in these plans? With this so much of surveillance over us, I'm sure all these bases are within the reach of the ballistic missiles of our adversaries. So I really think launch on demand needs to be given a real great push as of now.
Manik, first the military has to decide what exactly we need and by when. It means quantification and a roadmap. And when you say quantification, even if you're saying so many satellites, you need to understand exactly what one satellite or a constellation would do. And how does that fit into the overall infrastructure and the warfare capability of a nation? So capability development is not something that can just be built without going through a very detailed study of the assets that you require and by when.
Right.
Once you have done that, Then in that, you have to make sure that how much goes into the space situational awareness, how much goes into creating the type of satellites which will be able to warfight in space.
Right.
How many satellites will be required to support ground operations, air operations, and naval operations, even special forces.
Right.
Today, the number of satellites which are being thrown by private companies have surpassed the agencies of the world.
Yeah.
The NASA and the SpaceX. There's no comparison.
Absolutely.
And once the capability is being built by the private industry is also supporting wars.
Absolutely.
Because there is nothing, it is not a green paint on a satellite which should be owned by somebody from the military to say, this is mine and nobody please don't.
National effort.
It is a national effort.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as a result, once the privatization is understood, that is part of the overall infrastructure, as we call it, dual use, multiple use, or whatever. It is the capability of the nation which you're building. And the capability of the nation needs to be spelt out.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that we should not explore Moon, we should not explore Mars or Venus, but we have a limited budget.
Absolutely.
You need to prioritize what you need to
Concentration of resources.
Concentration of resources. So I think when you have a budget of the nation, you need to understand where is the bang for the buck.
Absolutely.
And like, for example, Apollo mission,
right,
which made United States win a war, which is a space race.
Right.
They went to the moon, but how did they conquer the ground? Nothing. It was just to tell the Soviets that we are better in technology than you are. Don't waste your time and money on it. We are much ahead of you. That's it. After 1969, why did the Americans not visit moon again? Because they knew it was the worthlessness of it. Till the time the Chinese made them realize that the rare earth materials are important, and lunar and planetary materials are also important. Now everybody is looking at go and get minerals from the moon or from the Mars.
Correct.
So the story has changed, but we must understand which part of the story are we part of.
Absolutely. I fully agree with you, because once the budget is limited, and as we've been taught as military professionals that, two things which stand out as, which we were taught, I think in my first time in India, as principals in the service classes. Two things which a military guy can start on and which can be related to the corporate and the development of capability is, concentration of resources and unity of command and control. I think if this can be done, if we can ensure this as a nation, then only capability can develop. So, Gen Pannu, you have been associated with the SATCOM Industry Association. You interact with so many startups. You are on the mentor to so many of them. And so what is the industry's perspective, of how this national capability is being developed right now? It was wonderful to hear you, in fact, interact with you during the India Space Congress recently at the industry roundtable, right? With Dr. Subha Pavluri and DG SI. It was great learning for all of us, giving a 360-degree perspective. So from the industry perspective, how do you think things are evolving? In space is doing a good job. Dr. Pawan Goenka was there. I think that one thing which maybe the private industry is the availability of patient capital is an issue. So what are your views on overall the industry development, how it is going to support the space as well as national security is concerned? And do you think the funding mechanisms adequate? Because I've been a proponent of technological readiness level models, TRL based funding models, and if I can explain this context further for your inputs, I was at the FICCI Federation House 10 days back. So we were told that ANRF, the Anusandhan National Research Foundation, is going to be the place to get any R&D going in India right now, right? Including what's happening in the DRDO as well. But they are starting from TRL 4 onwards, the funding. I'm saying that if a startup is there, how do you start from TRL 1 to TRL 4? So we have proposed a TRL based funding model. So, and this is being followed in other countries as well. So what are your views on this issue?
I think we need to have a holistic ecosystem and understanding of what needs to be built. And once we know what needs to be built, anybody who's building towards that mission is the one who has to be given priority in funding. Rather than, in fact, yesterday I was interacting with some very young people and I asked them, are you mission oriented or are you opportunity oriented? So they couldn't understand, and somebody said, "You are from the military, so therefore you have a mission in your mind." But these people are not from the military, so they possibly, and not that they say they have opportunity in mind, because that is the only thing that they see.
Right.
Now, if you have the entire thing worked out, where you want to reach by when,
Right.
you will seek opportunities in that direction. But if you don't have that roadmap, you will continue to start seeking opportunities in any direction. But at the end of it, what will happen? It means all your TRL levels will go in directions which may not be related to the mission, and you have built something,
Right.
but not something which goes into the direction of where you want to go. That is point one. Point two is that as far as private industry is concerned, I think in last few years, the industry and the academia and the military have started coming together. I'm actually very impressed by some of the officers who are extremely competent in uniform today when they talk about space. It wasn't like this about 5-7 years back. They were trying to figure out, they would look at an ISRO scientist to tell them about things. But today, some of the military officers, I find, are doing their own reading. And we don't have enough literature. That is why I decided to write a book. At least there is a baseline given out.
What is that book? Could you just tell us about your book?
My book, incidentally, is named Taramandal Sangram.
Oh, why not?
Taramandal is constellation, Sangram is war.
Right.
It means the space constellations at war, which actually means satellites being used for warfare, which means space warfare.
Right.
So when you sit in all these different forums and you find that there are certain gaps of understanding, then somebody has to write it on one piece of paper so that most of the people are reading the same piece of paper the same way and not imaginatively thinking their own way. You know, somebody sees one YouTube, another person is seeing some other,
Right.
writing by somebody else, and everybody is trying to figure out in their own way.
Is the book published?
The book is published. It is going to be released in August. 19th August, we are going
Very
to launch
nice.
the book.
I'm sure you'll give me one copy. And
Yes.
just for the viewers, this is one copy which has got Gen Pannu also. So, it is the power of future machines, and this is a autographed copy given to me by Gen Pannu. It was in February of 2023, where it talks of the power of future machines, essays on artificial intelligence. So, Gen Pannu has been a prolific writer, and I'm sure, sir, you will present me that book of Taramandal Sangram as well when it comes out on 19th August. That's
Certainly.
great. Absolutely great.
Certainly.
So, can you just in brief, what is Taramandal Sangram? Can you just tell us what's going to talk more about it?
Interestingly, when people talk about space, they forget about the Earth.
Right.
If they forget about the Earth, they don't understand actually the Earth is the client of the space. People don't sometimes comprehend that the Earth is moving and rotating and revolving.
Right.
In last 1 hour that I have been sitting with you, the Earth has shifted by about 1,500 kilometers. That
Right.
is the speed at the equator is 1,670 kilometers an hour.
Right.
That is the speed of
Right.
rotation.
Right.
So we have almost sitting where we are sitting, one has to be very cautious of the lat long of
Absolutely.
where you are.
Absolutely.
We have also shifted 1 lakh kilometers in the revolution.
Right.
So we are not where we started.
Yeah.
We have moved that fast.
Correct.
And if you don't understand the Earth, you will never understand the space, because
Correct.
this is where the gravity is. This is where the atmosphere is.
Right.
This is where ultimately the downloads will happen. This is where the Earth stations are going to be configured. All the clients are sitting on the Earth.
Correct.
So unless you understand the Earth, so my Taramandal book actually starts from the Earth. It goes into the celestial, bodies, the two-body issue, how the rotation happens, the relationship between Moon and the Earth,
Right.
the relationship between the other planets and the Earth, and the relationship to the Moon and the Sun. These are the things from where the space technology has been inspired from.
Right.
So it goes into the military warfare and the future of it, and the national security, and how the future industry and indigenization and industrialization
Right.
is going to contribute to space. So it is a whole gambit. It is a thick book.
Right.
I hope you like it. It is,
No, I'm
it is
sure
the first
it must be
attempt of
worth
mine.
reading. I'm sure it would be a great fun to read this book. So, General Pannu, coming on to my final question of this episode of Asymmetric DefTech podcast, we all talk of a whole of nation approach, and I would like to say let's talk of a whole of ecosystem approach. Space as a pivot to national security involves large number of stakeholders, be it ISRO, be it InSpace, be it the end users, be it DRDO labs, and the industry. At this point of time, in your opinion, with your vast experience, and you've been dealing with this subject for the last 8 years plus, and seen. So, how satisfied are you on this whole of ecosystem approach right now? Do you think there are still some gaps? Do you think we really need to improve on certain things? So what are your recommendations on that?
I think rather than giving you a long explanation, I think we need to break silos. In your silos, you can be a champion, but then collectively you don't become a champion. I think we need to collectively become a champion, and by coming out of the silos only can we become champions. So if one ministry and the other ministry and another department, they realize that ultimately the future lies in the space, I think they must have space specialization in every institution, every school, college. We need to have a spread of universal basic education about space. Our youngsters need to be taught. So therefore, I realize that the space education is not really as much as it should be to our future generation. So therefore, I decided to start the Space Club of India. Space Club of India is less about industries, more about skilling and more about awareness. So we are actually having number of schools and colleges. In fact, Bihar, they had 16 vice chancellors, 40 principals, and I don't know how many teachers who have come together under the Aryabhatta Knowledge University.
Right.
That they want to learn about space, because Aryabhatta really is an Indian, and he is the one who invented zero.
Right.
And वहां से दुनिया को गिनती आई, वहां से आपको क्या चांद पे जाना मुश्किल था,
right.
धरती और चांद की दूरी का अंदाजा लगा.
Right.
So when I went and spoke to them about all this, they feel that it is their birthright,
right,
to actually learn space,
right,
ghar space. So when you talk about whole of nation approach is not going to be only the ministries and I said everybody has to come out of the silos and start talking about space. Today you have wearable, tomorrow you will have an implant, day after tomorrow you will have everything which is going to be dependent on artificial intelligence.
Right.
You are going to be augmented by artificial intelligence. Possibly there would be clones and the drones and the robots working together. How will you deal with this ecosystem unless it is a whole of nation approach? A whole of world is coming together. Why not nation to come together?
There was a proposal, as part of the DRDO reform committee, as a follow-up to this thing, what you said. You absolutely really rightly mentioned about skilling. But I would like to seek your views. There was talk of a Defense Technology Council being at the apex level, And right now also you have the Defense Secretary in two roles. He's officiating as a Secretary DRDO as well for some time. So do you really think, operationalization of the Defense Technology Council with all stakeholders, you have Department of Space, DOS, you have METI, you have got DRDO, you have got MOD, you've got all these ministries, because going through the various conclaves also, the industry talks of orders, we talk of aggregation of demand. So when I see a whole of system or a whole of nation approach, like you also said, so I think the industry's more participation would be when this makes business sense. Business sense means they get orders. Orders means aggregation of demand, right, from the various ministries. So two parts to the question. Your views on operationalization of the Defense Technology Council at the apex level, getting all these secretaries and all these ministers together in an empowered group to develop space capability, which is so critical to national security, and that's why we're talking about it, and aggregation of demand. Yep.
Interestingly, day before yesterday, we were having a debate during the Kargil Vijay Divas celebrations, and General Raj Shukla, prolific writer and speaker, he said something interesting, and I completely like what he's saying. He says, we keep building layers over layers over layers over layers, committees, this committee, that committee. And I don't think so our secretaries even understand how many committees they're sitting in. There are far too many elements, institutional, non-institutional elements, ad hoc elements put together. we don't understand how the older layer must replace the new layer. We keep the old also there. We keep having layers after layers, and at the end of it, everything becomes counterproductive. I think whatever we need to do, we need to make sure that the old guard changes and the new comes, rather than keep having new over the old and new over the old. So I think this transformation approach needs to be a whole new approach, but you can't jerk the old system. Must understand, how we in the military, we look at for how long you need to have a document.
Right.
Beyond
Correct.
that, it is not required anymore.
Correct, absolutely.
But you can't keep having generations and generations of institutions which are still functioning, but none of them are even referred to. So I think we need to first do in a whole of nation approach how many systems we need to actually throw out of the window and where the new systems should come up, make them more accountable and efficient. I think no new system should be created unless it is felt that it is functional and it is delivering. And roadmap are only not to be built, but I think roadmap also needs to report. And I think if reporting becomes, the benchmark of efficiency, you can have the technology committees and boards and all that. But I think one day, you need to have a podcast on how many committees are running, which are not even known to the person who's running.
Regarding this Defense Technology Council, I would like to tell you there were a lot of senior generals also involved in this, and this was part of the
No, I'm not saying it is not required.
Reforms Committee, and just to substantiate, I fully agree with you, Tariq pe Tariq and committee pe committee, I fully agree with that. But, see, two things which I said.
I think you need to have a committee on the committees, how many committees are there and how many committees are not functional.
We'll do that once maybe offline, right? But I really think that, I firmly believe in two things, which the military, I'm a second generation officer, so that unity of command and control is important. There has to be one guy who's actually leading the front. And I think, in my personal view, the Defense Technology Council is a real great need for the day to get everybody on board and to make them accountable.
Who should lead it? A non-technical guy?
No, I think it, as per the recommendation, has to be the Honorable Prime Minister who's be heading that.
That is
the level.
You can't have Prime Minister to decide everything. He's there. He is there for the whole of nation.
Yeah,
there's one Prime Minister for the whole of nation.
Absolutely.
But every committee, which is a serious committee, you need to have a functional head who you can hold responsible.
You can have empowered group under him. You can have empowered.
Yeah, accountability has to come down.
Yeah,
and not only transfer.
So that is Gen Pannu. That's what I'm saying. It is only for fixing accountability. And this is a new thought process and idea. So I thought, anyway, I really want to thank you for coming for this wonderful podcast. And on behalf of Asymmetric DefTech, I would like to just give you, a bag of goodies we give to our guests, and I'll request you to just take this and the guys this thing. So this is our actually you will see this thing podcast, and it has got something with Manik as well, right? And you've been a great mentor to me, so I thought I will give this thing to you. And over the years, thank you, Gen Pannu.
I think for sake of transparency.
A token appreciation from
that is
the past.
Only the lighter way.
Yeah. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen and Gen Z, we now come to the end of the second podcast of Asymmetric DefTech. The topic, as you've been hearing us for more than an hour plus, has been space as being pivotal to national security. It has been an interesting conversation with General Pannu. Right now, I feel that space is very critical, and that's why we selected this topic for the podcast. We really feel that all stakeholders have to come together. We are in the era of technological sovereignty. Bharat is practicing the policy of strategic autonomy. And we feel that the route to strategic autonomy goes through technological sovereignty. And technological sovereignty also, because space being so critical to the economic and the national well-being of every common citizen of this country, we feel it needs real due emphasis. We need to really fast track, right? Maybe a formation of a space command, maybe operationalization of the Def Technology Council, issues regarding the patient capital availability to our industry TRL-based funding models, right? We have got ANRF having a model. We have got IDEX. The DAP 2026 talks of TRL levels. But to fight the next war, a war with attrition, what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in the Gulf, if it happens in our context, we need to graduate from technology readiness levels to manufacturing readiness levels. We saw in the 4-day conflict what happened. So really, what I would personally feel that we need to really pull up our socks and start talking of manufacturing readiness levels, start talking of developing deep tech capability in the space domain. Thank you all for watching this podcast. Please do like, comment, and share like you've been doing in the previous edition. It's been great fun bringing all this podcast to you. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.